Board Member Gonzalez, we are streaming.
Thank you. Welcome to the Board of Education meeting. I call this meeting to order. I want to remind those speaking tonight during the meeting that we use the closed captioning function on YouTube, so please speak as clearly as possible. Now I ask that you stand if able and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance in English and Spanish.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Juro fidelidad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos.
We will now move to our land acknowledgement. We gratefully acknowledge the Native peoples on whose homelands we gather, as well as the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make their home here today. I'd like to now ask for a moment of silence for those who have given their lives in service to their country. All right, we will move on to roll call. Dr. Albright, can I have a roll call, please?
Courtney Jackson,
Here.
Crystal Tapia Romero,
Here.
Heather Benavides.
Here.
Josefina Dominguez. Ronaldo Tomorito. Janelle Astorga. Danielle Gonzalez.
Here. We will now move on to our next item, which is agenda item 2.1, agenda adoption. To consider, can I have a motion, please, to consider adoption of the April 2nd, 2025 Board of Education meeting agenda. And just as a reminder, per the APS Board of Education Governance Manual, any member of the board can ask that an item be removed from our consent agenda before the meeting agenda is posted, but not during the meeting. Is there a motion and a second?
I move we adopt the April 2nd, 2025 Board of Education meeting agenda. This is Board Member Jackson.
This is Board Member Tapia Romero, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Courtney Jackson,
Yes.
Tapia Romero.
Yes.
Heather Benavides.
Yes.
Danielle Gonzalez.
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez.
Yes.
Thank you. You threw me off there with the order. Which is totally fine because it was still good. And so now we're moving on to agenda item 3.1, which is to consider approval of the minutes from the Board of Education meetings on February 5th, 2025 and March 5th, 2025, and also the special Board of Education meeting on February 28th, 2025. Is there a motion and a second?
I move to approve the minutes from the Board of Education meeting on February 5th, 2025 and March 5th, 2025, as well as the special Board of Education meeting on February 28th, 2025. This is Member Jackson.
This is Member Tapia Romero. I second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Tapia Romero.
Yes.
Heather Benavides.
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez. We can barely hear you, Board Member Dominguez.
Yeah.
Ronaldo Tomorito. I know Board Member Tomorito is trying to join us. Danielle Gonzalez.
Yes. So that motion carries. We will now move on to our next agenda item, which is the most exciting part of the agenda and the reason I know everyone is here, our student outcomes recognition. Superintendent Blakey, will you please lead us in the recognitions?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, President Gonzalez and members of the board. Tonight, as we prepare to discuss Goal 3, I am pleased to highlight students from across Albuquerque Public Schools who embody the work that we will be talking about tonight. Goal 3 is about ensuring that every APS student graduates ready for what comes next, college, career, or service. Our job is to create the systems that open doors, and tonight we celebrate our students who are walking through those doors with confidence. We will be recognizing students in 3 areas tonight: bilingual SEAL pathways, which we track through interim goal 3.1, career-connected learning monitored by interim goal 3.2, and advanced placement credit, which is the focus of interim goal 3.3. Students, as I call your name, if you can line up to the left where you already are. So seeing how smart these students are, that they can read my mind. And once I mention everybody, the board members and I would like to shake your hands, and Mr. Garcia and Ms. Fraga have a certificate and a small gift for you. So we will call you up as soon as we finish reading everyone's names. But you probably already know that because you are very smart and already ready. Okay, so first we want to recognize students who are on track to earn or have already earned the bilingual seal, which is interim goal 3.1. If you can please take a step forward when I call your name so we can see you. Haley Cornfield of La Cueva High School and Kaylee Bahi of El Dorado High School have made history as the first APS students to earn New Mexico's bilingualism by literacy seal in Dene. Christina Hill of Volcano Vista High School is on her way to becoming our first student in New Mexico to earn the bilingual seal in Russian.
Wow.
And Anna Quesada of Valley High School represents the many students in APS who are working toward earning their bilingual seal in Spanish. The next group of students that we celebrate tonight are thriving in their CTE classes, which interim 3.2 tracks, and they are working toward earning their industry certifications. Brom Stewart, Michael Plibansky, and Zoe Nelson. These students are part of the automotive pathway at El Dorado High School and are members of the Eagles Auto Tech team that took first place at the regional New Mexico Junior College automotive competition.
Cool.
Our next group of students, Atriyu Orozco, Angelina Gonzalez, Olivia Brody, Adriana Ramirez, and Jasmine Morales. These students are part of the teacher cadet pathway at West Mesa High School, and they also have qualified for the National Educators Rising competition. And Dominic Duran. Dominic is part of the Engineering the Future pathway at Valley High School and is preparing for a union apprenticeship as a welder. The final group of students that we'd like to recognize tonight have excelled in AP coursework, demonstrating the growth and perseverance needed to succeed. These students have taken at least one and as many as 9 AP courses, which interim goal 3.3 measures. From Atrisco Heritage Academy, Henry Newcomb, Alejandro Lucero, Martha de la Cruz, and Anahi Marquez. From Albuquerque High School, Maria Garcia and Pilar Gleason. And from Valley High School, Jesus Jaramillo. All of these students reflect the essence of what you will hear tonight in Goal 3, preparing every student for life beyond high school. If all the families and teachers and principals who are here tonight can please stand to be recognized for these students. Thank you for your support of these students. I know it takes everybody working together, and students, if you can come forward to shake our hand and receive your certificate.
Congratulations. Great job. Congratulations. Congratulations. Great job. Congratulations. 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 Great job. Congratulations. 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 Great job. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Great job.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Good job. Thank you. Thank you.
For graduation.
Huh?
Happiness for graduation.
That's right.
Get ready. Yep, I just got.
My cheeks always hurt after graduation of like.
Very cool.
As our students are working the line and receiving their gifts, I just want to reiterate the congratulations from the superintendent on behalf of the whole board. This is so super exciting. We are really really glad to be able to do this during tonight's meeting. Looking forward to celebrating and acknowledging not just our students and their accomplishments, but the families and the important role that you all play, as well as the staff. We know this is always a community effort and so important. And so as we think about the work that our community has charged us with and how important it is to be meeting these goals, it is just so wonderful to be able to put a face to the successes. And so congratulations to you all. This is really awesome. We look forward to everything that's going to come from here on and to all of your successes as they continue. And we also just learned how to say congratulations in Russian and Dene. So that was kind of cool too.
Yeah.
Learned how but can't pronounce it. Are we ready to move on or is there? Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you again to all of our students and family for joining us, as well as the staff for that student outcomes recognition, which, as I said, was the most important and great part of the meeting. And so if anyone wants to leave for the second most important part of the meeting, this is your chance to head out. I know a lot of people are here to see all of the excitement and activity of the board, but I did want to offer you the opportunity to exit
Nice.
should you wish. Congratulations. Thank you again.
Who's the board member for Trisco Heritage? No? The young man from Trisco Heritage needs a letter of recommendation given to the U.S. Air Force Academy. So he wants to be board. I think the board will see what we can do.
Very cool.
Oh, do we have a little changeover?
We've been having meetings for public forum.
Oh, are they outside?
I think there was enough room.
How Christy?
Board member, I believe she's outside. We'll be escorting public forum guests in the room in just a second.
Do you know how many we have? Last I heard
20
was
22 is the final total that I'm looking at, which will be 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
She's a descendant, she meets decedent. And every time she says, yes. And I would be like, that's not what I said. Every time, every time.
We need a bigger boardroom.
Did you look at the executive committee?
I mean, we could like put several rows of chairs all the way up into.
Way up, they're sitting like.
Yeah.
And then they have like the blue. All right, I think we are ready to move ahead to the next item on our agenda, which is public forum. And for this, I will turn it over to Board Vice President Jackson to please share the instructions for public forum.
Right. So welcome to our public forum guests. When you signed up to speak, you were asked to review the rules and the expectations which our presiding officer will enforce. The New Mexico Open Meetings Act requires that our agendas specify in advance the items that will be discussed and voted on during the meeting. Therefore, public forum is not a dialogue among speakers and board members, but rather a chance to hear from our community. We will call participants to speak in the order they signed up, whether in person or virtual. Those here with us tonight will be asked to come to the microphone at the back of the room when your name is called. Our online guests will stay in a virtual waiting room until it is their turn to speak. We have set aside 45 minutes for public forum. Tonight we have 22 speakers, so you will each have 2 minutes to speak. Flipping the page. Once your time is up, you will be asked to quickly wrap up. If you feel unable to convey your message, you may email boarded@aps.edu. We've received many emails already. In addition, for those of you who are here tonight, a representative from our service center is here to assist you, and she's right back there. So at this time, Mr. Gonzalez, will you introduce our speakers?
Thank you, Board Member Jackson. Our first speaker tonight is in person, Demara Andretti, followed by Ron Muir and Tony Watkins. You have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Thank you. My name is Demara Andrade, and I am bringing up a concern that there is over 125 plus sexually explicit materials found in the APS libraries. As a public institution, you are to guard the public trust that has been placed in you. As this is primary, secondary, and special education, the parents of our community are entrusting you with their children's education and formation up to and including preventing access to harmful materials within said institution. The presence of this content shows that you have, whether through apathy, antipathy, lack of vigilance, or deliberate action, broken that trust, perhaps all. While there are strawman statements of us being book banners or LGBTQ, anti-LGBTQ, we ask that you just let these materials please speak for themselves. Some will be reading out of the materials tonight, so I encourage parents who are in the room with their children to have their children step out if you don't feel comfortable with your kiddos hearing these materials. And if any of you do not feel comfortable with this material, I ask you to ask yourselves, if I don't feel comfortable as an adult hearing this, why should children hear it?
And I will make sure the board gets these. Okay, our next speaker is Ron Muir. You'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking, sir.
Good evening, board. Back in January, you as a board decided to get rid of 9th grade health education. Well, there's a sign right in front of us that we can see that really should be put back here. It says student outcomes don't change until adult behavior changes. When an 8th grader goes to 9th grade, it's one of the biggest changes in their life. And one of the classes you got rid of helps them deal with those changes, like suicide and drugs and sexuality. And you talk about student outcomes, you're all for student outcomes. What about the student outcomes when you get rid of a class that gives the students the skills to handle these stresses in high school? Because this 14-year-olds are now around 16, 17, and 18-year-olds, and the stress can be a lot more than they've ever had before. So I'm asking you, why do you say student outcomes are important? Why? Over here on your goals, goal number 4 says that, you know, all those things, they are taught in 9th grade health education, and they do affect student outcomes. The survey that you all decided was part of this decision to get rid of 9th grade health education. One of the things on that survey that you did notice was that over 2,000 parents wanted to keep 9th grade health education in 9th grade. Guardrail number 4 says you're supposed to listen to parents. You didn't. Who are you listening to? Is it the superintendent only? We've given you overwhelming evidence that this is an important issue. Are you really for student outcomes? Stand up for the students and the parents and the community. Student outcomes do matter. And I tell you what, some of the most important student outcomes are when a student has to deal with suicide, sexuality. A 9th grade health class will teach them how to handle that. Please take the time at the next school board meeting, bring it up and go for a vote and listen to the parents, listen to the students. Do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Our next speaker is Tony Watkins. You'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Hi, everybody. I'm with Families United for Education. I'm here to stand with New Mexico Foundation for Open Government and the ACLU in opposition to the new media policy that only permits the board president to speak to the media. Constituents deserve to hear how their board members voted and why. This is essential for basic accountability. The rationale that it would be confusing to parents if they heard from more than one board member in the media is patronizing and insulting to our intelligence. It also smacks of control of information, which is particularly problematic given the attacks on freedom of speech going on now at the federal level. Secondly, I urge the board to familiarize themselves with APS policy KB. This policy was the outcome of a lengthy organizing effort by Families United for Education to bring over 500 family and community members together to write a policy that spoke to our lived experiences. The policy calls for cultivating equitable and effective systems, expanding communication, utilizing the histories and cultures of our families and communities as a foundation for education, and building relationships and capacity among all stakeholders, regardless of their place in the organizational hierarchy. The adoption of the new media policy is clearly a violation of policy KB. We urge you to rescind the new media policy and direct the administration to train teachers and counselors on policy KB so they know that APS is officially committed to equity, ethnic studies, and building authentic partnerships with families and other community members. We can be reached at familiesunitedforeducation@gmail.com.
Thank you, Mr. Watkins. Our next speaker is on Zoom, Hollis Hess.
Yeah. We can't see ourselves, but I'm guessing you all can see a really cute second grader.
We can see you and we can hear you. Once you begin speaking, you'll have 2 minutes.
Hello, my name is Hollis Hess. I am 8 years old and I am a second grader at Monte Vista Elementary School. I'm going to be talking today about outdoor learning and the environmental club at my school. When I learn outdoors, I get a better experience than in the classroom because I can see, hear, and smell the things I'm learning about. It's also more fun when I learn outside because I get to learn how to take care and help what I'm learning about. Outside is also more peaceful and I can hear the birds chirping, and I think it's way better than being inside because I know what to expect.
Is there anything else you'd like to say, Hollis?
I like my environmental club at my school, and I like that we have access to our outdoor garden.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you. Good job. Good job, Amy.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Casey Peterson in person, followed by Tara Dayton. Casey, right? Okay. You'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
I want to stress parents with any kids to please don't allow them to listen to the books that are allowed in schools. This is allowed in 8 of the public schools. It's Push by Sapphire, and I'll just read a passage out of here. And the Precious is the name of a infant baby. And so they said, an adult male here, so he's on me. Then he reaches over to Precious, starts with his finger between her legs. I say, Carl, what you doing? He says, shut your big ass up. This is good for her. Then he get off me and take her Pampers, and he tried to stick his thing in Precious. This book goes on to have other things like this quote, nigger rape me, I'm not stealing shit, fat bitch, your husband rape me, rape me. Also, we have fuck, face fucking, fuck, cunt, bucket, slut, nigger, pig, bitch, and it goes on and on. So I know there's been a lot of proposals for removing explicit content from schools. I think this falls in that category, but can we just start with a simple rule and eliminate just across the board, write a rule that any book, 1 in 10,000 books ever published make it into our schools. That's how selective it is. There's so many books to choose from. So I would say a good rule that we can just write today is any book that talks about finger fucking or raping an infant should just be off the table. Just my opinion.
Our next speaker is Tara Dayton.
Hello, my name is Tara Dayton. I'm from Monte Vista Elementary School, and two great things that I want to talk about that are happening at my school are that the school garden is being revamped by the environmental club that I run before school with about 13 students and 3 mom volunteers, amazing volunteers. The kids get to learn about things related to the environment, and they also learn about the fundamentals of planting seeds in our garden. We recently got a $500 grant from the city, and I want to mention the young lady who just spoke, Hollis Hess, and her brother helped get that grant. The students were involved in writing it in the club, and we purchased $500 worth of we purchased $500 worth of plants and compost, native plants and shrubs and compost from Plants of the Southwest. The students are also publishing a book about New Mexico plants and animals. Another thing that is really positive and great happening in my 4th and 5th grade gifted classroom is that students are participating in the Wild Friends program with the UNM Law School. They collect data, for instance, when the leaves change color, and they enter that data along with other data into Nature's Notebook, which is a dashboard that is free to do citizen science. They also helped write a memorial, which was passed by the legislative this session, and Governor Grisham will declare a statewide Citizen Science Day on April 25th. There will be lots of great things happening in around the state with this declaration, and yeah, just wanted to share that positive stuff for outdoor learning.
Thank you. Our next speaker is on Zoom, Sarah Smith.
Thank you. Children and young teens, will you please leave the room? There are over 125 plus books in Albuquerque Public School libraries that are age inappropriate for students. These are books that contain graphic descriptions and images of sex acts, including between teachers and students. Detailed passages of children being sexually assaulted, molested, and raped, children using hard drugs and alcohol, teens engaging in self-harm, cutting, and suicidal behaviors, and much more. If these books were rated like movies are, they would be rated R, NC-17, or XXX. For instance, the book Court of Silver Flames is sold as adult erotic fiction. This book is present in 7 of your high schools, as well as Van Buren Middle School, where it can be accessed by kids as young as 10 years old. A brief quote. He pounded into her at a steady, deep pace. The liquid slide of his cock into her sounded obscenely through his otherwise silent bedroom. His balls brushed against her, tickling her with each powerful thrust. End quote. This is clearly not age appropriate for 10-year-old children. A 17-year study of children beginning in 7th or 9th grade found that exposure to sexually explicit media, including books and graphic novels, is associated with early sexual debut, unsafe sex, and multiple sexual partners, thereby increasing the risk of teen pregnancy and sexually transmitted diseases. In that study, 23% of girls and 14% of boys had been exposed to sexually explicit novels. Other studies have found that kids exposed to sexually violent media are more likely to be involved in sexual violence, including sexually harassing their peers, forcing others to have sex, and being victims of sexual violence. The book Push by Sapphire, already mentioned, is present in 8 of your high schools plus Tony Hillerman Middle School. This book contains numerous detailed passages about a father raping his daughter, including full penetration rape of an infant. You are providing this book to children as young as 10 years old. Will you please create a policy to ensure that the books in your school libraries are assessed for age appropriateness? You need to perform a full audit of your school libraries in order to ensure you are protecting children from content that is harmful. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is in the room, and I believe it's Dawn Andretti, followed by Dr. Christine Muir.
Good evening, Board. My name is Don. Pertaining to the sexually explicit books in the APS libraries, as I continue to read excerpts from this guide that's in my hands of the books that are in these libraries, and at any point that I'm told that I cannot continue, you have proved my point here. If you do stop me, then you still prove my point here. So any sensible adult hearing these excerpts would do the same as we do. Books like Judy's Bloom's Forever, which is located in Douglas MacArthur and Cochiti Elementary, plus many middle schools and high schools. It says, "When we woke up, Ralph, the name of Michael's penis was hard again. This time Michael made it last much longer and I got carried away and I grabbed his backside with both hands, trying to push him deeper and deeper into me, and I spread my legs as far apart as I could and I raised my hips off the bed and I moved with him again and again and again. And at last I came right before Michael. As I did, I made noises just like my mother. Michael did too." End quote. Are you comfortable with letting children have access to this content? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Dr. Christine Muir, followed by Michaela Peterson. Dr. Muir, you have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Good evening, Board. In August, the HB 171 Advising Committee only spent 15 minutes on their agenda for a discussion on discretionary units for social studies and to make the decision on health education and PE. 15 minutes for two very important decisions that had to be made and then presented to you. Why? In March, there was a journal article that showed that you all decided to change the registration option after two people came to talk to you. That was extremely encouraging. That was great. It was a great move that happened by APS. So I'm perplexed. APS made a decision to fix the registration process when two individuals spoke at a board meeting. However, when over 2,000 individuals voiced that they are concerned about health education moving to 8th grade and wanted to see it stay in 9th grade, the board is yet to reverse that decision that was made by the board. First, we were told that we needed to hear from health professionals. Well, I was a bit taken aback by that because I am a health professional. I have a PhD in health, wellness, and health education, as well as many other health professionals that come in front of you and spoken. Then we were told that that you all would just monitor it and as it was moving forward. Well, I'm not sure how you're going to do that with all the cuts that have happened at the federal level, and I'm guessing that the YRS is no longer going to be administered across the nation, much less in APS, because of the cuts that have happened. I'm not sure how you monitor, and that's an every other year survey anyway, so it's not a good monitoring tool for health education. I do not understand why the board refuses to move on this issue when you have been made aware of the sound reasons why the decision to move health was not a good decision. In addition, your focus on improving student outcomes. How do you improve student outcomes without a strong focus on student health, beginning with health education?
Dr. Muir, I got to stop you. Please wrap up in a very quick sentence.
I'm imploring you to bring it back at your next meeting and take the right vote this time.
Thank you, Dr. Muir. Our next speaker is Michaela Peterson, followed by Arturo Quintana. You'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking. I will hand that to the board members. Thank you.
So if you felt a little bit sick or disturbed or embarrassed hearing any of those excerpts, like I heard people groaning when we asked kids to leave the room, but they were very obscene, and it's a little hard to read out loud, even in this meeting. That means it's absolutely too obscene to hand to our kids or make available in their libraries. Now, many good people compiled this book that they will give to you, 125 sexually explicit books, just sexually explicit books. It's not talking about any other ideologies or anything else, just pornographic books in our kids' schools. And right now, under APS policy, a parent can contest a book one at a time at each individual school. But these books are in many, many schools. If even half of these were in half of our schools, it would still be over 10,000 challenges for sexually explicit materials. That's not oversight. that seems like it is obstruction by design. That is purposefully exposing our kids to this stuff. Now, studies show that early exposure to sexually explicit materials causes psychological trauma, anxiety, shame, compulsive behaviors. It causes academic decline. You should at least care about that. It causes risky and early sexual behavioral problems. Increased exposure leads to unprotected sex, coercion. It increases their vulnerability to grooming and exploitation, which is why we ask the kids to leave. I have a son who we are adopting. He was sexually abused before he came to us. Predators groom children, and they use sexually explicit material to desensitize them so that they can target them. They first tell them and ask them if they can keep secrets from mom and dad, which is another issue we have with public schools, right? And then after that, they expose them to sexually explicit material, pornographic material, and desensitize to that, and then they rape them over and over and over.
Ms. Peterson, I'm sorry, you're going over your 2 minutes. I need you to wrap up in a quick sentence, please.
Yes. I have submitted a policy proposal for you to just define clearly and transparently what sexually explicit material is, and please just get it out of our schools.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Arturo Quintana, followed by Janet Sayers. You have 2 minutes once you begin speaking, sir.
I hope some of you are sick and tired of hearing all these books and quotes being expressed out loud, but if that's the case for you guys to hear us, then so be it. This is not a matter of free speech. You are free to say whatever you want. However, if you defend these explicit books rather than opposing them, you might as well be protecting the rapist, the murderer, or the thief, since your logic and reasoning are subjective and diluted. It's common sense not to give a thief a bed in your home, to let a murderer sit at your dinner table, or to invite a rapist in your house to watch over your child. If you see these labels clearly, you wouldn't invite these kind of people who act with deliberate malice. That's how dangerous these books are. However, if you intend to be ignorant about it and save these books, then try giving these books a test run in your own home library, like this. Choke by Chuck Palahniuk, located at Volcano Vista, page 18. Quote, "For a sex addict, your tits, your dick, your clit or tongue or asshole is a shot of heroin, always there, always ready to use." End quote. For those who oppose what I just said, this is the kind of material you're advocating for, and that's just disgusting. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Janet Sayers. And as always, you'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Good evening, Madam President, board members, Superintendent Blakey, and members of the APS staff. I'm Janet Sayers, a graduate of 1966 Del Norte High School, and I wanted to comment on 4 things. I do want to thank board members Gonzalez, Benavides, and Tomorito for attending the open house and a social emotional learning program last week at Hodgen, for making themselves available to interact with the public and also answer questions and take questions at the end. I did want to also comment on the wonderful creativity and talent that I saw yesterday. I went by the Metro Youth Art Exhibit, which is opening, and it'll be open, I believe, for 6 weeks. Just amazing work coming out of both all of our high schools, but also our middle schools. And it was just encouraging to see it. Then I'm glad that Mr. DeFay is in the audience, because I just wanted to bring up again how many recreation facilities are out there that are totally independent from the school building, such as the soccer fields at Comanche, Inez, Hayes Middle School, Sombra Del Monte, Jackson. And it just seems like there should be a way of allowing public access, either with a different kind of fencing or something. But we will have a long, hot summer, and it would be great for those to be available. And my last thing, and I'm really not ready to, I don't know what I'm going to say about it, but I cut the article out of the paper where it talked about the board members only being allowed to comment or commenting through the board president.
Ms. Sayers, I have to stop you. I'm sorry. Please wrap up very quickly.
I will wrap it up. I know what you're going for, but it just seems like each board member has a unique perspective and a unique set of schools and constituents. And Josefina Dominguez is my rep, and I want her to be able to say how she feels about the different decisions that are made. So I don't know, but I'm going to keep it close and look at it more often and try to decide what I really think about this. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is on Zoom, Lorraine, I believe it's Lother.
Louder.
Lother. You have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
I have 3 young children, all under the age of 10, and it's important for school boards and librarians to be held accountable for the content in school libraries. Just like we set parameters on the internet and TV for them, schools should be selecting age-appropriate material. That's what parents count on. Unfortunately, I've seen inappropriate materials at the schools. I'm grateful that parents are raising awareness to protect children. We should strive to set a policy to allow access to age-appropriate material while protecting them from the stuff that isn't. Thank you for considering my input.
Thank you. The next speaker I have listed is Audrey Eldred. And it says 4th grader. Oh, there you are. Okay. There's your mic, and you'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Audrey Eldred. I'm in 4th grade at Monte Vista Elementary School. I would like to talk about an administration called Citizen Science, or Wild Friends. Wild Friends is amazing, and the reason I think that is because I got to learn a lot about law, because I got to go to the Roundhouse. I got to go to the Roundhouse in Santa Fe, and I actually got a pill passed for Citizen Science Day. Wild Friends is also a very cool administration because it gives opportunities to kids that are younger, and they get to make differences, and they get opportunities to learn about law. And they get to go on really fun field trips, and I just wanted to add that positive thing. Citizen science is this thing that citizen science is a way that average everyday people like students and teachers get to help raise the environment and help with the environmental knowledge. I use Nature's Notebook, and I get to upload it on my dashboard, and I send it to scientists all the way in Roswell. And it's a really cool experience, and I just wanted to add that positive note. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is in the room, Christina Williams. Thank you, ladies. You'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking, ma'am.
Greetings, board. That's going to be hard to follow, though. My name is Christina Williams. I was here last month. I am a crosscat teacher at Alameda Elementary. And last month, I shared with you plans for at Alameda creating an outdoor learning space for all students. And this week, we brought some of that together. Dedicated teachers and parents and community members came out this weekend to start building our outdoor garden and labyrinth from funds from our outdoor equity grant. We set aside our Chromebooks this week and embraced our agricultural and archaeological heritage through day-long activities this Thursday, turning our outdoor spaces into dynamic classrooms. And this Friday, I was able to attend my first ever Sandia 5th grade excursion. I talked about look forward to an event that all 5th graders get to do at Alameda, and I finally understand why it was such an amazing capstone experience for our students. I witnessed those so-called troublemakers transform into quiet observers as we sat and a squirrel snuck up on us, and we were captivated as deers trailed behind us, and the whole class was in rapt attention as the wind blew through trees. I hope this is something we can all get behind and share, because this is something that should be available to all of our students. Our students were tiptoeing under the underbrush, finding evidence of producers, consumers, decomposers, and they were bringing vocabulary to life. The vocabulary they hear in the classroom, they get to see and touch and feel and smell in our outdoor classrooms. On Thursday at our campus, I saw students that struggle to communicate verbally, students that normally are wearing headphones and need one-on-one support, and they go outside and they are overwhelmed by the outdoors and had breakthroughs, squeezing balls of clay and making seed balls that will one day become wildflower gardens in our back.
I got to stop you right there. You've gone over your 2 minutes. Can you wrap up real quick, please?
Eyes were lighting up, and so I look forward to this continued growth, and I do hope that you all support the social emotional learning for all of our students. They all deserve an opportunity to be outdoors and learn, not just places where teachers are willing to go that extra mile. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is on Zoom, Megan Long. Megan, are you there?
Yes.
There we go. You'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Thank you. Hello, I'm speaking today because I would like there to be a record of opposition to the new board policy that prohibits elected members of the board from speaking to the media about their vote. Curiously, this policy comes after a contentious series of board meetings and is, I believe, an attempt to stifle any board members whose votes do not align with the majority. This policy reflects the escalating assault on free speech that we are witnessing on a national level. Constituents deserve to hear from their elected officials without the censorship of the board president. You cite wanting to maintain unity to the public. There isn't unity when there are votes of opposition. Presenting it as such is false. We deserve to know when board members who have voted why board members have voted in opposition. We urge you to rescind the new media policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Our next speaker is in the room, Mary Walker Herrera. You have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for being here tonight. My name is Mary Walker Herrera. Here's an excerpt from the book D-Trans about a young girl, 19 years old, who struggled with a deep depression, suicidal tendencies, and gender dysphoria. She had begun the process of medical gender transition and was living in a group home. The mother received a phone call from the coroner's office and informed her that her daughter had taken her own life. The 19-year-old had laid herself down on a set of railroad tracks. She was first seen, the engineer said, sitting on her knees, then lying down onto her back. The engineer sounded the horn, set the emergency brakes, but it was too late. This is an excerpt from the coroner's report. Located a few feet west of her rib cage was the descendant's left sneaker and part of a fractured rib. Located southwest of that piece of fractured rib, south of the north set of train tracks, were multiple blood marks leading up to the descendant's head. The descendant's right sneaker was located on the north set of train tracks, feet west of the 57 freeway. The coroner's report goes on and on, describing injuries so extensive that authorities concluded that the 19-year-old girl could not be positively identified, visually. Research into the demographics of rail suicide has shown that most have diagnosed mental illness. Was this 19-year-old who suffered from suicidal tendencies diagnosed with mental illness in any pre-treatment for transgender medical and/or surgical procedures? As school board members, would you prevent this from happening in our community? Thank you for being here tonight and listening.
Thank you. Our next 2 speakers are on Zoom, and we'll start with Callista Winiger Valdez. Winiger?
That's Winiger Valdez. First try. Nice.
First try. Okay. So you'll have 2 minutes when you begin speaking, and then when you're done, say
right here.
and we'll start 2 minutes over for her.
Okay. He's a boy, but
I'm sorry.
No worries.
Sorry,
It's all good.
Cyrus, we'll start 2 minutes for him.
Cool. All right. Hi, my name is Callista Winiger Valdez, and I am the mother of Cyrus Winiger Valdez, a first grader at Monte Vista Elementary School. I'm here to talk about outdoor learning. When students learn outside, they learn in different ways than they do in conventional classrooms. Students' brains are engaged in multisensory learning when they learn outside. The sensations from digging in soil and planting seeds, for instance, help to solidify memories that the students form regarding nature, the environment, and ecological systems. With hands-on activities like working in a garden, students engage with learning in a way that also helps them see how their actions make a difference in the environment around them. While books, computers, and the internet help students learn information, spending time outside and working with nature can help them understand how that information applies to the world around us, and they really can make a difference. And I also help out in the Planeteers Club at Monte Vista, and the kids there, they're learning how to do research. They can use art to learn about nature, and it's just a really amazing experience. And I think outdoor learning should be in more schools if it isn't, already in the schools. And if it is, they can use more, support. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and start the timer over. Cyrus, when you're ready, begin to speak, and I'll start the timer.
Hi, my name is Cyrus Winiger Valdez, and I am in 5th grade at Monte Vista Elementary School. When I learn outside, I learn more about planting and seeds, and I just love marveling at nature. Learning outside helps me learn about seeds, how to plant and use soil, and the amount of water that plants need. When I learn outside, I feel good. It makes my heart feel kind of peaceful. When it's stormy, it makes my heart feel more playful. When it's normal and sunshiny, it makes my heart feel calm. At Planeteers Club, I like that we get to do things in fun ways about planting and animals, and I like that we do drawing sometimes in it too. I like working on the school garden because I like planting seeds and watching them grow. And I like that it's helping my school too. It makes our community a better place. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. And thank you both. All right, our next speaker is in the room, Dr. Sinello, followed by Renee Pacheco. You have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Good evening, Madam President and school board members and superintendent. I am an alternative health doctor and minister. Thank you for serving. Are you all aware of this? In a Dear Colleague letter on March 28th, the United States Department of Education Student Privacy Policy Office encouraged schools receiving federal funding to comply with the parental right provisions in the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, which is FERPA, and the Protection of Pupils' Rights Amendment, PPRA. Per a press release on the department's website, ed.gov, and I quote, "Compliance with this law means schools must allow parents to review all education records of their student, including any document related to a student gender's identity," end quote. Regardless of your politics and hot button issues, the Parental Rights Foundations holds strongly to the belief that parents, not government agents, know that it is best for their minor children. This is an American citizen issue, not a progressive, nor Democrat, nor Republican issue. For the website, and I quote, "Parents are the most natural protectors of their children. Yet many states and school districts have enacted policies that imply that students need protection from their parents," said U.S. Secretary of Education Linda McMahon. These states and school districts have turned the concept of privacy on its head, prioritizing the privileges of government officials over the rights of parents and well-being of families, end quote. Now, with that said, the letter also addresses priority concerns identified by the department, including, number one, ensuring parental rights to inspect and review education records, and number two, ensuring parents receive annual notification of their rights. Thank you. May God bless APS.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Renee Pacheco. You have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
I just wanted to say thank you for speaking out against these books. You guys are courageous, and I know I couldn't read from that. Even hearing that. Anyways, I commend you guys. Thank you. All right, so SB 500, a bill that wants to ensure that parents know puberty blockers cause low bone density, impaired brain development, and that there's a low data on long-term effects in fertility in children, was refused to be heard at the legislative table. There's also an FDA warning that they carry a risk of pseudotumor cerebri, a disease that includes swelling of the optic nerve, headaches, vomiting, elevated blood pressure, and eye muscle paralysis. When youth take hormones like estrogen, high doses in boys cause testicular damage. Large doses of testosterone in girls causes impact in ovarian function. I ask that you tell the parents, talk to them and make sure that they're giving full consent. Full consent is knowing every side, everything about the said drug that you are administering, carrying out these counselors with. The parents deserve to know, and the kids deserve to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Nina Simbana. Are you there, Nina?
I am.
Hope I was
Thank
close. You'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Simbanya.
Simbanya, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, members of the board and Superintendent Blinky. I'm a mother of a second grader at APS Elementary School. I'm here to ask the board to revisit the policy of the governance manual under board responsibilities and authority to clarify the language in 44. While hopefully not the intention of the policy, the language suggests limitations on board members' First Amendment rights. While I acknowledge a need to distinguish between a board member's personal opinions, final board policy decisions, I don't think I need to remind those who are listening, board members are elected representatives for their districts, and as such must be able to speak publicly about their positions on board votes and their positions on issues before the board in order to communicate in a meaningful way with their constituents. Policies that prohibit free public speech made by elected officials are undeniably anti-democratic. For this reason, the policy statement must be revised to meet the appropriate goal, which is, in this instance, is to show clear distinction between a board member's personal opinions and a final official board policy decision in cases where difference of opinion arise. Upon reviewing the policy, both the New Mexico Foundation for Open Government and the ACLU of New Mexico have concerned that the policy unconstitutionally limits school board members from discussing board decisions. Quote, while board members must respect the democratic process, they also have a fundamental First Amendment right and duty to explain their votes and engage in public discussion about policies that impact the community, end quote. Rather than leave this policy up to interpretation or misinterpretation, I request the board visit the language in 44 to clarify intent. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Board members, that completes public forum for tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez, and thank you to our public forum guests. We will now move on to the next item on our agenda, which is agenda item 6.1, Student Outcomes Focused Governance. For this agenda item, we will consider acceptance of progress monitoring reports for interim goals 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, which are related to post-secondary readiness. Our presenters for this item are Superintendent Dr. Gabriela Duran Blakey, Dr. Antonio Gonzalez, Deputy Superintendent for Leadership and Learning, Sherry Jett, Chief Academic Officer, and Mark Garcia, Associate Superintendent for Secondary Education. Invite you to come forward and have a seat. As I mentioned, we'll be monitoring interim goals 3.1, 3.2, and 3.3 tonight, measuring post-secondary readiness. Before we begin, however, we need to confirm that our monitoring report is complete. I did consult with the administration and believe that all of the criteria for an effective report have been met, but I will open it up to the floor for anyone else who thinks we may be missing any one of the elements. So do any members of the board have any evidence that suggests that we're missing any elements for the progress monitoring report? Okay. Excellent. Since everyone agrees that the required elements are present in the report, we will open up our floor for our monitoring conversation. And as a reminder, we have asked questions in advance over email that are technical or tactical in nature before tonight's meeting. Those questions and those answers are posted with the agenda materials for the public as well as for the board, of course, to see. Each member is expected to ask a question during this monitoring session to help us understand how the administration's actions align to the board's goals and guardrails. Those questions asked tonight must be SMART, meaning they must be strategic, measure-focused, ask-oriented, results-driven, and time-bound. And as an additional resource, board members have in front of them what do you call that? Placemat, a guide with guidance on the effective question asking strategies. And we also emailed the effective question asking strategies in advance to board members. So let's go ahead and get started. For the administration, is there anything you would like to present before we get into our questions?
No.
All right, so we will go ahead and go into our questions. I will go ahead and just start with our folks who are online. So we'll begin with Member Dominguez.
You. Sorry about that. So I have a follow-up question, and I believe it's answer number 4 in the Q&A, but it's with regard to interim goal 3.1, the section evidence and plan. And my question is, how will you know if if the quote, targeted communication strategies for multilingual learners, end quote, are working?
The board president, members of the board, board member Dominguez. So when it comes to 3.1 specifically, and when we think about monolingual speakers and multilingual speakers and families that also speak various languages, we're working on providing schools an updated SIL and STOL handbook. And within this handbook, we're going to produce various slide decks, one-pagers, and various tools that schools can use to communicate the various pathways to community members, to teachers, to educators, so that we collectively have a broader understanding of opportunity knowledge within bilingual SIL attainment. And one thing that we're going to be doing as well is taking account both anecdotal and survey results of communications, and actually looking into if communication is working by taking into account what the community is telling us, in addition to enrollment trends, keeping an eye on that data and seeing if more incoming 9th grade students are actually entering into the identified courses. So that's one indicator of if communication is working. But one other thing that we realized is that communication for bilingual SIL pathways shouldn't happen in 9th grade. We're talking this communication should start in pre-K. We had a kindergarten roundup recently where this information was provided. So it's not a one-time thing that we talk about bilingual SIL. It's all encompassing. It's what we value in Albuquerque Public Schools. Our community has expressed the value of being bilingual. So starting early as we can in communicating bilingual SIL opportunity, but then following it up through specific key points in students' transition from, like, example, 5th to 6th grade, 8th to 9th grade, and so on.
Great, thank you, Dr. Garcia. Member Dominguez, did you have any additional questions?
Well, I guess, so what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're depending a big portion of, you're depending on enrollment to be an indicator, mostly. And not just at the high school level with 9th graders, but you'll be tracking 5th grade transition, 5th to 6th grade. Is that correct? I think I missed something in there.
Board president, members of the board, board member Dominguez. When we talk about communication specifically for earning a bilingual SIL, it's multifaceted in knowing if our communication is working. We can't solely just look at enrollment in a 9th grade bilingual SIL course. It takes a communication from pre-K through 12th grade and consistent and communication that's in multi-languages so that communities can communicate this in different languages so that multilingual community members can have an opportunity to see what's available within the district. In addition to that, also ensuring that we're getting feedback in regards to our communication, whether or not it's working, both anecdotal by speaking with stakeholders, educators, family members, are and is the communication that we're delivering working? And if it's not, what adjustments can be made? So it's fluid in nature, and we're always in a continuous improvement mindset in that through a cycle of continuous improvement, we do a survey, we take account whether it worked or not, but it's fluid and continuous, and communication for bilingual SIL encompasses pre-K through 12th grade.
Okay, I'm gonna just continue a little bit, because in reading one of the answers, there's discussion about monthly or regular information, the dissemination of information to key stakeholders. I did not read how the administration would get that feedback. And so I guess I'm sensing that that's still fluid.
Madam President, Member Dominguez, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Blakey, I'd like to elevate what Mr. Garcia said in regards to multifaceted and looking at the data through multiple measures. Specifically, to give an example, I think one of the things that we monitor ourselves with through the data is Guardrail 5, which speaks about our accountability to the community in relationship to ensuring voice of families and ensuring voice of staff as we work to roll out any number of initiatives, including but not limited to the work of bilingual SEAL. So in preparing for progress monitoring in a few weeks from now, we are looking at that data now and seeing how the strategy and the accountability, for example, with ensuring voice of families, parents on a school's instructional council as a specific interim guardrail to ensure that we are looking at the data from a longitudinal point of view is there. Another example is every school has a principal advisory committee. That's another data point that we are monitoring in one of our other guardrails to ensure student voice with rollout is monitored. We have advisory councils that inform the work at a school level as well as at a district level. So these are just 3 examples of ongoing monitoring of data to ensure accountability to us the district in ensuring that we are keeping the pulse, if you will, in regards to ongoing collaboration and communication with internal and external stakeholders.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. We will go ahead and move on to the next board member and circle back around Member Dominguez if you have additional questions. So next we have Member Tom Morito.
Yes, my question falls on page 6 of the 3.1 interim goal. And it falls under expanding the communication around the SEAL attainment. And in here it states many students and families lack clear information on the requirements and benefits of the bilingual SEAL, particularly the global SEAL. Now, APS wants to launch a multilingual outreach campaign, and I see steps for the students and how you're intending doing that. Could you give me some examples on how you intend to reach out to families? And just share with me some of those thoughts. Thank you.
Board Member Tamorito, members of the board, specifically some examples of how to communicate with families, again, is not really a one-time thing, but thinking about what available technology that we have available to us. For example, Parent View, we have our APS website, we have our APS communications team, and any opportunity that we have to communicate the benefits of the bilingual SIL, but really what moves people, I think, for example, are the stories that we provide. And we had 2 real examples of the benefits of bilingual SIL tonight, honoring and recognizing the very first 2 students in Albuquerque Public Schools to earn the Navajo bilingual SIL. So tonight was just an example of how we're communicating that opportunity. Moving beyond that, again, I talked about providing one-pagers to community in different languages and so forth. So really trying to shift our mindset to not think about bilingual SIL attainment in like one time and space, but it's all, like I said before, it's like a cohesive mindset, and it's a way of doing business within Albuquerque Public Schools, and really schools leaning into any opportunity we have to have a family night or a transition from one grade to the other from 5th to 6th to ensure that we're providing that opportunity. Another area in this communication is providing visuals of pathways so that when students do transfer from one community to another, that they have knowledge of the pathways from pre-K through 12th grade and what opportunities lie. So really also updating those visuals. And then anytime, again, when we have these like 9th grade nights, that we purposely and intentionally provide that information to families. So those are just several examples to provide for you at this time.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Garcia. Member Tomorito, did you have any follow-ups to that?
Not right now. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. We will turn to Vice President Jackson.
Thank you. So my question came to me at under 3.1, but I think it actually applies to all of them. So what I've noticed is that you all have done an amazing job of increasing the access to the information through all 3 of these. You've increased the supply, right? You've opened up the ability for our students to have access to all of these programs. But a question that I think naturally flows from that is, what strategies are you using on the opposite side to drive demand? What strategies are you using to make sure that the opportunities are there, but how are we going to drive our students to want to take these classes? How are you communicating the value? We obviously know it's a value because we've made it a goal, but what strategies are you using to ensure that our students demand it?
Board Member Jackson, Board President Gonzalez, Dr. Blakey, members of the board. when opportunity is real, they will rise to it. And when students actually can visualize a future that they see themselves potentially being part of, specifically when they see a future that is aligned to what they're learning in school. So the rigor and relevance of what they're learning tied to post-secondary readiness, really creating this idea that when students are thinking about a career path, that it's aligned to their goals and their interests. So we're launching a Ford Next Generation strategy at Monzano and Highland High School. And this strategy is career academies in schools aligned to career pathways and really career connected learning. So involving industry partners in alignment with what's being learned in curriculum. So when students are taking courses, they're learning through the lens of college and career readiness. So if they're working on math problems, how are they seeing the relevance to their post-secondary goals? So really connecting the relevance in curriculum to the students' future. And I think that's one example in a strategy that we're going to be implementing to making opportunity real for students.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. Any follow-ups, Member Jackson?
I think that that's a great analysis for what was it, 3.2? How are you driving demand for our bilingual seal and for our AP?
If I, Madam President, Member Jackson, members of the board, Dr. Blakey, I'd like to give a specific example in regards to 3.1, the bilingual seal. So we've had dynamic conversations in regards to what this data is telling us. I think one of the jewels in the crown of APS, if you will, is our dual language programs. We're very proud of them. We also recognize that the lion's share of those programs are an English, Spanish combo dual language program. So through conversation, we need to foster those programs, build those programs, make those programs more dynamic. But at some point, we will hit a point where the students within the Albuquerque Public Schools that want that program will hit a ceiling. So how do we look at that goal through a different lens? And I think it is through Pathway 4, the Global Seal, which basically provides space for students throughout the district who are taking coursework in a different language, French, German, Navajo, Zuni, Unit Chinese, Japanese. We have these pathways in Albuquerque Public Schools right now. How do we spread that word? Now that may be on a one-by-one basis because you may have some students at CEC taking the Chinese pathway, and we may need to work with them with intentionality. Did you know that this pathway exists? Did you know that this portfolio option to demonstrate your competence in a second language exists? What is the benefit of this for you? What post-high school benefit does this have for you? So really looking at the bilingual seal through a different set of eyes, if you will, in terms of capitalizing upon what we saw tonight, which is a huge milestone for us as a district in really highlighting two of our pioneers in terms of obtaining the bilingual seal in native language. There's really momentum in that space to support and foster increased participation in that seal. I want to say one more thing about that though. It doesn't start at 9th grade. We have many students and many examples throughout the district where we are at the 5th grade level, providing 5th grade bilingual seal certificates, an outward symbol to that student, that family, that community, that they took coursework and attained a bilingual seal in elementary school. Likewise, in 8th grade. Those numbers continue to go up, although they are not specifically monitored in this goal. they provide the groundwork and the momentum for us to build upon throughout the system.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. Member Jackson, we will come back to you if there's any additional follow-ups or additional questions. We'll turn to Member Tapia Romero.
Thank you. So mine is surrounding 3.2, where we talk about developing a task force consisting of diverse stakeholders. I would like to know a little more about that and what this task force is going to look like and how much influence would they actually have in the decision-making process. Because when we hear many times from public comment, it seems like there's a disconnect there. And what intentionality are we going to have to make sure that this isn't just in talk, but in true action? Page 5. Last bullet point. Second sentence.
It's in regards to the level all integration.
Do you have that?
So specific to the strategic plan around Level All, there is a task force right now that's working to understand how Level All is working for Albuquerque Public Schools, our students and families. Just some of the most recent conversations that have taken place about Level All, specifically that we learned and we're working with the platform in the state, was that when we had a broad number of students logging in right at once, the system would crash. So we actually worked on communicating that with Level All to improve what's happening with that system. Also through this advisement task force, understanding the barriers for students to actually get activated within the system. And with that information, we've been able to communicate strategies for schools in order to engage families and students in activating their accounts within Level All. And to date, and I know this is a little bit off of what you asked for the question, but I just would like to give some examples of how the task force has been working in listening to stakeholders and finding out how we can support them. So I think it is relevant. But right now, current student activations is 26,948. So 70% of our students have activated accounts. And right now, the real goal for Level All is to ensure that next step plans are completed so that students create in 8th grade their next step plan through their senior year so that they can align their post-secondary goals to their academic plan. And right now we have 2,841 next step plans submitted within Level All.
Board President Gonzalez, Member Tapia Romero, Board Member Superintendent Blakey. I think in terms of who is on that task force, Level All is a little bit new to us. And so we are working with a lot of the stakeholders that Mr. Garcia referenced in terms of, okay, what are we learning in terms of what's happening with Level All in the school? So those task forces would include, or the task force members include, for example, our principals, our teachers who are acting in the advisory role. We also are leveraging our principal advisory committees, which brings the student voice forward. And then I think an exciting part, but it's still very much in its infancy, is how we're thinking about leveraging community voice in the work, particularly around interim goal 3.2. We recognize that to truly bring a new experience to high school education, we really need our business and industry partners to lend their voice to that work. We believe that's going to build the sustainability in what our vision is. And I don't know that their voice is particularly active on this task force at this time, but we do need their input as we continue to grow and use Level All with our students and to help students really envision that future that we know they will be great in.
Thank you, all of our presenters. Ms. Tapia Romero, did you have any additional follow-ups there? Thank you. We'll turn to Member Benavides.
Thank you, President Gonzalez. So my question is related to interim goal 3.2, and just for reference, I'll just repeat the stat. The data shows that 60% of 10th grade students earned a credit in career-connected learning during the fall semester of 2024, representing a 7.8 percentage point increase, meaning we have surpassed our interim goal. That's fantastic, very promising. And so we've been presented with data that's identified challenges in scalability, resource allocation, equitable access, et cetera. However, we have not yet discussed long-term impact tracking. And so is there a strategy in place to measure real-world success of the career-connected learning graduates in terms of career placement or higher education enrollment? And if so, when will this be implemented?
Board Member Benavides, Board President, Superintendent Blakey. So I think when we think about long-term tracking specifically, we do a senior exit survey as a starting point in addition to keeping track of post-secondary credits attained. But through that senior exit survey, those things are accounted for, what their next steps are going to be after high school. I think in addition to that, when we think about 3.2 specifically, it's the number of 10th grade students obviously earning credit, but as a goal 3-4 team, we've shifted our mindset in how we're looking at how students are sequencing through courses. So they enter an entry-level course, then they go in a concentrator course, and then a completer course. And thinking about students in a completer course and knowing that if they earn advanced placement as an example, that's a way to also earn credit in college. If they earn an industry certification, that also is a metric that shows that students are college and career ready. Those are a couple of examples. So really thinking about how we're tracking students. So we've talked as a goal 3-4 team, and in my responses, I talked about a dashboard. And with that dashboard, we're looking at data in a way that's comprehensive and not in a single point in time. So 3.2 is a little bit in a single point in time in 10th grade, but we're not thinking just for 10th grade. So looking at the end in sight, trying to figure out, okay, for a certain cohort, how many industry certifications were earned. Then also looking at specific pathways and finding out, okay, at this particular school, through this pathway, as an example, how many industry certifications are earned, or an advanced placement course is also a completer course in a pathway. How many completer courses in AP have been earned, or a dual credit course, for example. So really looking at college and career readiness data in a comprehensive way. I hope that those give you a couple examples of how we're looking at the data at the end in relation to the data at 3.2.
Yes, that's very helpful. Thank you. And I know it's difficult to track a student once they're no longer in the school. And I think it's probably easier to, we know sometimes the students who have applied to colleges and they've gotten in and, it's announced, well, it was announced in Belen during the graduation ceremony. I don't think they do it here, but there's not enough time. And so, that's something that can be reported upon, but I think it'd probably be difficult to reach out to students after and to find out what careers have you entered based on your training at APS.
Madam President, Member Benavides, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Blakey, we do through the National Student Clearinghouse acquire some of that data, not all of it, but we do have post-secondary college enrollment. We do not have it correlated or specific necessarily to our students, but we have some of that, and our SAPR team does monitor that. And it is data that we do have available to us. But to your point, absolutely. It's tricky. the minute they walk across that stage and move into the real world to continue our connection to that data. But I think there are ways we as adults can change our practice and behavior to find creative ways to maybe find some of that, even if it's a sample of students and their post-secondary pursuits.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez and team. Any additional follow-ups, Member Benavides?
Not right now.
Great, thank you. So I have a question related to interim goal 3.3, which is covered in that document, pages 4 through 8. There's information on the plan and the progress to ensure that all students have equitable and sustainable opportunities to prepare for their post-secondary goals. And so my question is a current performance question, which is essentially, what do we know about the student population that is furthest from opportunity, furthest from being able to obtain their post-secondary goals? Who are those students? Where are they going to school? What do they need? What barriers are in their way? And how are you gathering information about them and then responding to that?
Board Member Gonzalez, Board President Gonzalez, members of the board, Dr. Blakey. So when we look at advanced placement data specifically, I'm going to give some data points for our focus group students, special education students in semester 1 credit attainment last year was at 8%. And for this fall 2024, credit attainment for students with disabilities was 12.9%. That's an example of the district as a whole, and an area of opportunity growth for us. Obviously, that's not the number that we're okay with. We need to improve that. The next would be English language learners. And in semester 1 of last year, we ended with 32%. And then at the end of this semester, semester 1 this year, at 40.5%, or 40.5%. So both areas we're seeing growth. But earlier I talked about the data dashboard and providing real-time data for schools, not just at the end of a semester, but how do we triangulate the data in real time so that at the end of a grading period, schools can see exact students that are in advanced placement courses. We can disaggregate the data by focus group students, and then providing the right intervention at the right time for the right student. And I think we've done a good job in shifting our mindset about advanced placement and ensuring that we're communicating with students and families about these opportunities and encouraging them to be part of AP. But what I want to say is that what we used to do is ask ourselves, who's ready for AP? Now as a district, we're asking ourselves, how can we get we used to ask, are they ready for AP? Now we ask, how can we help students be ready for AP? So really a shift in mindset, but progress monitoring at all points of the school year. And then again, like I said, providing those interventions, but also shifting from looking at data as a district in relation to the goals, but drilling it down to the school and then to the individual student.
Thank you for that. So all board members have had an opportunity to ask a question, and so I'll just open up the floor to the full board if anyone has any additional questions.
I actually have one additional.
We'll go to Member Benavides.
Thank you, President Gonzalez. So this question is in relation to interim goal 3.2 again. And I noticed through the report that collaborations with Nissan and Toyota dealerships and a trade union provide valuable opportunities, but additional partnerships are needed. And so to diversify the students' access to other industries. So is there a plan in place to create additional partnerships? And if so, in what fields?
Thank you for that question, Board Member Benavides. We do have a plan in order to grow those partnerships, and it is working through what we're learning through Ford NGL and developing what pathways we want to create at the schools to ensure that we have both equitable access across the district and we have those strong partnerships. So we don't have 13 schools knocking on the door of the same partner saying, let's partner, right? We know that would be overwhelming. So to that end, what we've started, and we started this with Manzano and Highland already, is basically an asset map around what are the industries, what are the businesses and the partners that are in the community in proximity to the school, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in proximity, that support the pathways and the career opportunities that we want to offer to the students there. And then by doing that, we're able to leverage our community school coordinators, but we're also partnering with our friends at the United Way to tap into those relationships and partnerships so we can really begin to build them. And I do think to your previous question about how we track post-secondary success, I think that will be part of it, right? When we strengthen these partnerships and we're constantly checking in and nurturing those partnerships, we're going to be able to tell those stories and collect more information about what our APS graduates are doing after high school.
And Board President Gonzalez and Board Member Benavides, I think in addition to what Ms. Jett is saying, the idea is that we develop these academies of Albuquerque that every high school will have. So it's starting with the schools that Ms. Jett mentioned, that every school will have the academies at their school, and it'll become the way that we do high school, because unfortunately for a lot of our students, they don't have access. We have opportunities, but we don't provide access for all of our students. So a lot of times it's if you knew to go to that school to be part of that pathway or the academy, or if your teacher or your parent told you that Sandia Labs does internships and you're able to do that, but we don't have it as the norm. And so a lot of our students don't know what is out there. So the plan is actually that we build this out in every school. So every school has a pathway, and the pathway has multiple jobs within it. So the pathway isn't specific to a job. The pathway is broader than that. And it's a way of how the students will learn their content through the lens of that pathway to bring relevance, because we've seen a lot of students become disengaged in high school particularly, and very apathetic to just like going through the motions of school. And it's concerning to us, that we're not providing this to our students, and then, they graduate and they don't know what that means, or they don't graduate because they are like, this is I don't want to play school anymore. So how we can really provide that relevancy, but the idea is that it's every high school, every student that would have the pathways at their school.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. I see Member Dominguez that you unmuted. Did you have additional questions?
Did, but I think they just got answered. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other board members? All right, well, I would like to thank the board for a very productive conversation. And now we will move on to a vote on whether or not we will accept this monitoring report. As a reminder and as a point of clarity, we're voting to accept this report as a formal acknowledgement that we had a satisfactory conversation with the superintendent and the administration, and that we have a deeper understanding of how the current reality for our students lines up to our community's vision for them. So in order to accept this report, we must all be able to answer yes to the following 3 questions. 1, does the reality of this report meet our vision for the goal? 2, is there growth toward the vision? And 3, is there a strategy and plan sufficient to cause growth toward the vision? So does any member have evidence that those 3 components are not there? Are we good with accepting, saying yes? Oh, we lost Dominguez, but I'm assuming yes. Tomorito, Member Tomorito? Yes. Member, there you are. Yes. Member Dominguez? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. So given that the answer to all three of those is yes, then the board can accept the monitoring report confident that the data is accurate and that the superintendent is performing. At this point, I will entertain a motion to accept this monitoring report.
I move that we accept this monitoring report. Board Member Benavides.
I'll second. This is Member Jackson.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Dr. Albright, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Jackson,
Yes.
Tapia Romero,
Yes.
Heather Benavides.
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez,
Yes.
Ronaldo Tomorito,
Yes.
and Yo Gonzalez.
Yes, and so the motion carries. I'd like to thank the administration, not just for the report, but also for all the great work that you're doing on post-secondary readiness. And it was really exciting to see the students be recognized for their efforts as well. So thank you for that. We will move on to our next item on the agenda, which is number 7, to consider approval of the consent agenda. For this, I need a motion and a second to approve items 7.1 through 7.18.
I move we approve the consent agenda for items 7.1 through 7.18. 7.18. This is Member Jackson, sorry.
And I will second Board Member Benavides.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Jackson,
Yes.
Tapia Romero,
Yes.
Heather Benavides.
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez,
Yes.
Ronaldo Tomorito,
Yes.
and Yo Gonzalez.
Yes, so that motion carries and our consent agenda is approved. We will move on to our next agenda item, which is 8.1, to consider approval to archive the board policy FE, naming, renaming, and dedication of facilities. And for this, I will turn it over to Member Benavides.
Okay, thank you, President Gonzalez. And if you all recall, we did discuss this at great length at our board meeting of March 5th, I believe. And I think the board was pretty clear on rejecting the idea of the board keeping the responsibility with the board and kind of archiving it and giving it back to, or giving it to the superintendent to take care of and under her responsibility. However, we did not change the motion to reflect that. So what we actually voted on was to not accept the revisions to the policy. So what we are here to talk about tonight is what we discussed at length at the March 5th meeting. And so if there are any comments that anyone wants to make about the pros and cons of the board keeping this policy, I'll open it up.
Great. So thank you for that. We will move to a motion and a second to consider approval to archive the board policy. Is there a motion and a second?
A question forward. Will there be an opportunity? I need to clarify my vote because I didn't have a chance to do that at the last will there be a discussion before we vote?
Yes, so we first go for a motion and a second to consider the agenda item, and then we'll move to discussion.
I will move to archive board policy FE, naming, renaming, and dedication of facilities. This is Member Jackson.
And this is Crystal, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second, and so we will turn to discussion on the motion to archive the board policy on naming, renaming, and dedication of facilities. Is there any discussion or questions?
I need to make clear. Oh, go ahead.
Member Dominguez, go ahead. You have the floor.
Okay, so during the February 5th Board of Education meeting, I shared my belief that I firmly believe that all buildings should be named in a way that honors and respects the history and cultures of New Mexico, especially our indigenous history. However, during the discussion, it occurred to me that I also had an obligation to honor what a community or a neighborhood chooses to name a building or school. And in particular, it struck me that I was assuming all my constituents had my view. And Oñate Elementary School parents voted to keep their name, no matter how offensive I find it to be to First Nation people in the Southwest. But when yet the parents have a generational and emotional connection to that name. Children who had attended that school 30 plus years ago now have children attending the same school. So the choice was nostalgic. Also, it occurred to me that Coronado Elementary School parents voted to keep their name. And in a discussion with the superintendent, she reminded me that Kit Carson and Polk communities also voted to keep their name. So it's complicated. But what was illuminated for me over the days after the February 5th meeting was this. Deep change requires building relationships in order to share historical views on sensitive topics. And this is something I couldn't articulate at the moment, which is why I voted no originally. But I was better able to think about this and articulate it as the days passed. So relationships have to come first. And I think we know that as elected officials, or I know that as an elected official. If we're to educate our community at large, and that doesn't happen overnight, we cannot skirt the hard work of relationship building. And so I also reflected on the fact that the last 3 to 4 buildings have been named after upstanding administrators, and a committee of administrators made that choice. The superintendent chose that committee. So if the board should influence anything, I'm suggesting that the board should direct the superintendent to expect diversity in the committee's choices. And so really the question is naming a building the direct responsibility of the board? And I landed on no. And still believe it's not. But if the responsibility was in our court, it would be our responsibility to remind the superintendent to honor and respect the culture and history of the vast majority of the communities we all serve. And so that explains my last vote, but it also explains why I will vote the way I do tonight to archive. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Member Dominguez. Is there any additional discussion or questions?
I have a question.
Member Benavides.
Thank you, President Gonzalez. So in the questions submitted, I asked, please describe the practical consequences of archiving policy FE and how it would impact the process for naming or renaming APS facilities. And the answer was the administration would need to write a new procedural directive as soon as possible, as there are 2 schools currently in the renaming process. And so can you disclose which schools they are?
Yes, Board President Gonzalez and Board Member Benavides, we currently have the new international school, which needs a name. So they are going through a process now. So we need to kind of know where they're going through the old process right now, because that's what we currently have. And Polk Middle School is discussing changing their name as well.
Okay. And thank you for that. My next question is just off the cuff. Superintendent Blakey, how do you feel about this becoming, kind of your sole responsibility? And I know it's not your sole responsibility, but how do you feel about that? Because you weren't here on March 5th. And I believe it was the March 5th meeting, although Board Member Dominguez has me confused now. So you weren't here to weigh in, and I would love to know what your thoughts are.
Sure. Board President, Board Member Benavides, I think we've discussed it at the policy meeting. So I think that's what Board Member Dominguez was the day of that. And I think what I had brought up during that time is that I certainly do think it is a connection of the board and the administration working together on it. I do have concerns about the part of the policy that states that board members, if a majority of the board decides to change a name that they can. I do see where that would not fall under the board's responsibility. But there are usually financial implications to changing a school name that can be upwards to $1 million in changing a school name. And so the board having connection to approval of the name change during the process is helpful in keeping kind of everybody on the same page of the community changing a name, because it will come to the board probably in the finance side of it for approval. So, you know, I do think that the board does have a role in agreeing to, or the bond and the money to build a new school that then is named. But I do think that the board has always accepted the community input side of a name. In my time in APS, I've never seen a board not approve the name that came from the community. And I think that's what Board President Gonzalez was bringing up, is if we would never not value it, then why would we spend our time on it? So I understand that concern. I do have some heartache over can a board override to just change names of schools? So I don't like that part of the policy. But the procedural directive does have a substantial amount of board influence in the procedural directive. So we would have to change a lot of that in the procedural directive rather quickly, as we have, you know, 2 schools following the current procedural directive and policy.
Okay, thank you. I have one more point to make, if you don't mind. So at the last meeting, it was brought up that the naming of schools and facilities, it doesn't really follow SOFG. We are here to focus on student outcomes, and this is not directly related to that. And I do see that. But I did some research into other schools or districts that are within the Council of Great City Schools. And it's a very small sample because I believe there are 78, maybe more. But, you know, the Baltimore City Schools Board of Education has kept this responsibility. There was no info in the Denver Public Schools. Aurora directs the superintendent to establish procedures, but ultimately gets the responsibility. The Phoenix Union High School District, the governing board directs the administrators to develop procedures for naming the district facilities and keeps the responsibility. And so, like I said, it's a small sample size, but I think if we were to do our research and look at all of the schools, I think it would be varied, but I don't think that it would be strongly a superintendent responsibility. And so it's not student outcomes focused, but I don't know why we have the pressure to do it now, specifically right now, especially knowing that there are 2 schools that are actually going through this process when it doesn't seem to be a practice of all schools that are using the SOFG governance model. So that's just something I wanted to contribute. And if there are any rebuttals to that or questions that anybody wants to ask, I'm happy to answer them.
Board President, Board Member Benavides, I think that our current process is probably when AJ sent his, like, these are his recommendations. Our current process is probably more on his second recommend. So one recommendation is the administration, and one is that the board serves as like the last approval. So like, which I think is what ours is more like. But then there is concern on that, as if the board is just going to rubber stamp whatever comes forward. Is that essential or not? But that's it. What we do currently is probably more on that second part of we bring the final recommendation to the board at the end. The board member whose district it is in typically serves on the committee.
And just as a point of clarification, that Baltimore City, Denver, and Phoenix are not actually student outcome focused boards. So they are members of the Council of Great City Schools, but they're not doing SOFG.
Fantastic. Who provided you that information so quickly?
Ashley Paz.
Oh, thank you, Ashley.
All right, if there are no additional questions or discussion, we will go ahead and move on to our roll call vote. We do have a motion and a second, so Dr. Albright, I'll turn it over to you. And again, this is just as a reminder, the vote is to approve archival of this board policy. So a yes means we archive it, a no means it stays with the board as was currently written because we did not accept revisions last time.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero.
Yes.
Heather Benavides.
No.
Josefina Dominguez.
Yes.
Ronaldo Tomorito. Board Member Tomorito.
No. No.
Thank you. Danielle Gonzalez.
Yes. So the motion carries and we will move on to our next agenda item, which is agenda item 9.1, which is our discussion items. And for this, we do have a discussion on our board time use evaluation. For this, our presenter is board member Josefina Dominguez, who per this round conducted our time use evaluation. So I will turn it over to you, member Dominguez.
It's quick. So for the first quarter of 2025, I'm going to divide this report up into 3 or 4 sections. First, a factual report, and then an analysis and recommendations based on some challenges. And then finally, some proposed solutions and a conclusion. So in the first quarter of 2025, the board held a total of 21 meetings categorized as follows. Board meetings, a total of 4, 2 dedicated to progress monitoring for a total of 2 hours and 11 minutes. February 5th, we had a 4-hour meeting. 21% of that meeting was devoted to progress monitoring and 79% to the annual governance review edits. February 19th was an hour and 48-minute meeting. 63% of that meeting was devoted to progress monitoring of Goal 2. We had 1 special board of education meeting and then several committee meetings, 2 ad hoc committee meetings, 2 policy committee meetings, 3 finance, and 1 audit. And we had 9 community engagements. So the time, I want to back up a little bit. With regard to the progress monitoring percentages, even though we had a 21% initially and a 63% in the second meeting in February, nonetheless, in the total hours of board meetings and committee meetings, we come in at 13% of our meetings being devoted to student outcomes, or rather 13%, yes, 13% of our time being devoted to student outcomes. However, if we included, and I'm just throwing this out there, if we included community engagement that was completely devoted to explaining student outcomes and getting feedback on the goals that we monitor, that would go up to 59%. So keep that in the back of your mind. And these numbers are numbers that Ashley Paz and I worked through because there were some challenges in the data entry. Data entry took over 6 hours. And I don't believe that's a good use of time, but I digress. So it took 6 hours total, troubleshooting a formula error in the spreadsheet, and which I finally had to reach out to Ashley Paz for help on that, and she fixed that formula error. The report the actual report preparation was an hour. Total board member time, again, 6 hours. So in my analysis and recommendations, I say the following: the purpose of the time use evaluation report is to track the board's commitment to progress monitoring to the goals. However, the current method is inefficient and requires excessive administrative effort on the part of a board member. So some key concerns: inefficient tracking process. The current process involves creating and maintaining 21 separate spreadsheet tabs, copying and pasting links to YouTube recordings and agendas, and manually filling in what I consider unnecessary data. And this approach diverts time for more impactful board member work. Second, requesting timestamps are a strain on limited staff resources. With only 2 staff members in the board service office, the additional step of providing a timestamp, a request that was made, I believe, last quarter, at least per my meeting with board member Astorga, that would further increase staff workload without a direct impact on student outcomes. And finally, 3, questionable value of time use evaluation. If only student outcomes monitoring is considered a priority, how does this process respect board member time or the goal? The current method doesn't effectively support the intended goal of documenting time spent on progress monitoring. So the proposed solution is to publicly announce and record progress monitoring time at the end of each monitoring session. That would take a very quick amount of effort to document the time immediately. The board member could immediately log this time into the time tracker spreadsheet on the spot. The approach eliminates redundant work and allows board members and staff to focus on more critical tasks. And so I would suggest that the board adopt a streamlined approach to track time, to respect both board member and staff time. By implementing a real-time logging system at the conclusion of each progress monitoring session, we can eliminate inefficiencies while maintaining accurate documentation of the progress monitoring efforts. The change would free up board member and staff resources. And yeah, that's my recommendation. I found it super useful, though, to see how much time we were actually spending in meetings. So I think that's valuable. But again, I think that's something that we can document on the spot and save everybody a lot of time.
Great. Thank you, Member Dominguez, for your analysis of the time use as well as your recommendations. I want to circle back to the factual component of your presentation. The information that we need for our Q1 self-evaluation is how much time we spent as a board in Q1 on student outcomes focused governance. So can you just restate for us the Q1 percentage of time spent on student outcomes?
So for the quarter, it was 13%.
Okay, what I'm seeing in the spreadsheet is 13% for February and 6% being the average across the quarter, or 5.88%. So I just want to verify to make sure we have the right number. Either way, none of those are 50%. So we're not meeting our 50% goal, whether it's 13 or 6. But I just want to clarify what I'm seeing in the chart for the quarter is 6%.
So it would be, that was a clarification I asked Ashley for. And yes, it ends up being, for the quarter, it's 5.88%.
Okay, so then
and 13% for February.
Okay, so the number that we need for the quarter is the 5.88%. So that would round up to 6%. So that's the number that we will take into consideration as we do our Q1 self-evaluation next meeting. Also, just given the recommendations presented by Member Dominguez, typically, according to our governance manual, it's the responsibility of the board secretary to manage the time use evaluation and monitoring process. With our board secretary out on leave, those duties have been delegated to our vice president. And so I'd like to ask our vice president acting as secretary, if you could just seek clarity from the Council of Great City Schools on these issues that Member Dominguez has raised and the recommendations that she has made as part of her evaluation. And I do want to just acknowledge also that it is practice of Board Services Office to timestamp the minutes. And so that was missed, but not intentional, primarily due to the absence of a Board Services staff person during this time. So that will be addressed. That is standard operating procedure for the minutes, and we've spoken to Board Services staff and the superintendent about that already. And so Member Jackson will coordinate or connect with the council about the issues that Member Dominguez raised. And are there any questions for Member Dominguez about the factual component of the report and the time use conclusion of 6%?
May I add, I just want to make sure that you caught that if we were to add community engagement that is focused on reporting out and getting feedback on progress monitoring our goals, that could potentially have gone up to 59, I think I said 59%.
Yeah, so we did catch
Okay.
recommendations for what we could do differently. And so our acting board secretary will circle back around with our coaches on those recommendations and what we can do. So with no additional questions, we will move on to our next agenda item, which is agenda item 10 and the president's report. So we will begin just with public forum and acknowledging that public forum is not an opportunity for dialogue, but we do want each speaker to know that you are heard, that we take notes, that we're listening, and that we do follow up with the administration on resolutions. Some of the issues that we heard about tonight were related to books, to health education, to outdoor learning, to public access to recreation areas, to children's health and wellness, and to our board governance manual. Also want to acknowledge that between the last meeting and this meeting, we did host 2 public community engagement events, our mid-year community engagement about our goals and guardrails. And those 2 events were hugely successful. So big round of applause. Yay! We had about 80 people in attendance, and I think the highlight was working with the community schools staff to align work that they were already doing to engage community and to get parents into buildings to add on to that. So we are doing our community engagement in coordination with our community school staff. So that was really great. And just like to thank the committee again, which is Member Jackson, Tapia Romero, and Benavides for your contributions to putting together those engagement events. And our next regular board meeting is April 16th. So during that meeting, we will discuss many important topics. One that we just addressed was our Q1 board self-evaluation. So as a reminder, each board member conducts their own self-evaluation using the SOFG rubric. We've provided 2 different ways for you to do that. If you'd like to do it electronically, or if you'd like to do it the old-fashioned way, you can do that. Either way, you just need to have your scores emailed to me by April 14th. And that's to allow enough time just for the analysis across any areas of consensus or discrepancy with board members as it relates to that rubric. So I can present that data and we can have a conversation around the self-evaluation. So that deadline again is April 14th. That was shared in the last At a Glance weekly message, and we'll share it again this week. That April 16th agenda will also include the bond sale and a first presentation on our community engagement plan. As a reminder, this is a presentation from the Community Engagement Ad Hoc Committee to the rest of the board to get our feedback. So we will ask questions, provide feedback and suggestions to that committee, and then that committee will go back and quickly turn around those revisions and provide new materials to us for our May 7th board meeting, which will be the action meeting related to our community engagement recommendations. And again, this is our community engagement plan going forward for the next 2 years, which aligns with our new progress monitoring calendar, which will also be approved at that May 7th meeting, but sticking still with the April 16th agenda. There will also be a budget presentation in that meeting, and that's going to cover both federal and state programs, as well as the district's operational budget, which, as I think folks know, is the vast majority of the budget. So that's what we will be covering then. And per usual, we do receive the budget materials in advance, have an opportunity to ask specific questions about the budget. Those questions are answered during our Q&A period so that we can spend board meeting time talking about strategic issues related to alignment of the budget to the strategic plan. So that's the April 16th meeting. Then on April 22nd, we have an audit meeting at 5 p.m. On April 23rd, there's a finance meeting at 8 a.m., which will also include another conversation around the budget. And the district, just to acknowledge also that the district does have a comprehensive progress monitoring infrastructure in place. And so even as we as a board are monitoring just the goals and the guardrails, it's important to acknowledge that the district is also obviously doing a lot more than that. So we began reports about each of the strategic plan priorities in January, starting with special education. We paused that to redirect and focus on budget presentations. But once we do approve the budget on May 7th, we will resume the district's strategic plan implementation presentations. And so that'll be starting up again. So an opportunity to dig into more detail on specific strategies and initiatives that are cross-cutting and related to the strategic plan, not just to progress against the specific goals. Okay, so May 7th meeting, we already talked about, that will be when we approve the final budget. So that'll be presented for approval. The budget is due to the Public Education Department on May 19th. So we are set to meet those deadlines, but again, a reminder to please review all budget materials in advance. Please ask questions in advance that are technical and tactical so we can have strategic conversations during our meeting. Also on May 7th, we will have a progress monitoring conversation around goal 4, which is skills, habits, and mindsets for life success. And member Benavides will be leading the facilitation of that progress monitoring. And so we'll meet with the administration to approve the report. And that concludes the president's report. And our next agenda item is agenda item 11.1, which is to consider approval for the Board of Education to convene an executive session as authorized by the Public Meetings Act to discuss strategy for collective bargaining negotiations as allowed under Section 10-15-1H5. So is there a motion and second to convene an executive session?
I move for approval for the Board of Education to convene an executive session. This is Member Tapia Romero.
I'll second. This is Member Jackson.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Courtney Jackson?
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero?
Yes.
Heather Benavides?
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez? Ronaldo Tomorito?
Yes.
Danielle Gonzalez?
Yes. So the board will go ahead and convene into executive session. We will reconvene to open session after the executive session. But at this time, I'd like to ask everyone who is not part of the executive session to please leave the room and leave the virtual room. And we will